that bluff stand that Tiffany shot her first film kill ever in their film early film years was the same tree. Again, you don't see this stuff behind the scenes. It's the same tree that your Uncle Mark and Terry literally had one of the worst fights I've ever seen.
The one where they were climbing down?
He was going to climb down and climb back up and strangle your Uncle Mark.
History right here. Okay, so this segment of DoD TV is brought to you by Leupold, American to the core.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Drury Outdoors 100% Wild Podcast, episode number 206. I'm Steve.
That's right, because the last podcast we had, this is great. I'm Matt, and you are actually Matt. Steve. We got Steve Stoltz with us today. So we had Michael Waddell on last week.
Oh, really? In here?
Not in the studio, on Zoom. And out of nowhere, he called Tim. He called him Steve. Out of nowhere. I'm like, this is not Steve Stoltz. This is
just Tim Chelsvik. Yeah.
Well, I think that's cool though. That even though I've had a long hiatus or from Drury Outdoors, I should say, that he would still identify me with the company.
You're still top of mind.
That's right.
Right there. Oh, Michael Waddell.
I am
thinking about you.
Thank you, Mike. Or Michael.
Like, put a mouth call in and you will automatically know that I'm not Steve Stoltz.
That's right. So we got a fun podcast in front of us here.
F-U-N.
We got our good buddy, Steve Stoltz. So
thanks for having me.
Yeah, Steve was with us in the early days. OG at Drury Outdoors. In fact, he probably wore a lot of that bottomland back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
And field tested it.
Yeah, and so Steve, I think the thing that most people remember you by in those early videos was for some mishaps, right?
Oh, yes. Yes. Until I got a good sight system, like a red dot by Leupold. Can I say that?
Sure.
Yes.
You can say anything.
Okay, good.
And we do.
Till I got a good sight system, I had a tendency to miss. I got to think.
You said that like you're a recovering alcoholic.
I did.
I likes to drink.
I was addicted to missing.
Well, you got to be good at something.
Well, so I think, do you remember what video it was? Was it Monster Bucks 2 or so? There was a giant, I just remember it was Dad filming you, or there's a story here.
Yes. And so, actually your dad kind of got fed up with me and left.
I'm shocked.
True story. No, true story.
I know.
So he had filled his tag. And I think I filmed him fill his tag. And so the game plan was he was going to stay with me till I fill my tag. And of course it's a rut and anything can happen. And sometimes you have those long periods where nothing happens, and off the hill comes a huge giant. And I believe he was an 8-pointer, if memory serves me correct. And off the hill, the deer comes and gets point blank range. And to try and make sure that I'm drawn as the deer walks by the tree, I pre-draw, which was a mistake, because I not only drew too soon because the deer was facing us, I had a sham of a glove and I had the old release aid that triggered off kind of like I don't know how to explain it, but basically by your thumb, and that chamois glove or wore out glove that was all tore up, part of that glove pressed that release aid when I was at full draw waiting, and it went off, and your dad,
who's gracious,
your dad was gracious enough to say, "That's it, I'm out. I've had enough." I think I had already screwed up several deer before that.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
and it was like third time's a charm. I'm out of here. We'll get a different cameraman for you.
Yeah, and I feel like were there some stories with like Stan Potts too, where like maybe Stan got upset a time or two with you guys?
Oh, he would, but we would have a lot of fun. I know some of the stories with Stan, we would kid around with him, but he's always so serious about his hunting.
Yeah,
and so your Uncle Mark and Terry would know how to get under his skin.
That surprises me.
Oh yeah. So
had that happen to me.
I'm hearing Stan Potts cursing triple canopy.
That's what I was trying to get at. So something about you not trimming a set. It was I guess you guys all used to trim each other's sets or whatever.
Well,
switch where who was hunting where.
Yeah. So we were responsible for obviously taking care of our own ground, our own piece, whether we leased or I didn't own at the time. And, but we would all take turns filming at each other's places.
Yeah.
So you would essentially be going in, say, to a farm that your dad had gotten ready, but it's your turn to hunt.
Yeah.
So he's filming you, and you have to deal with how they set it up.
Yeah.
And wasn't always the best situation, according to Stan Potts, which God love you, Stan. I love you. But the reason why he shot 3 or 4 giant over 200-inch whitetails in his life is because he's real particular.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a reason why the man's been successful, right?
Well, apparently you didn't trim enough for his liking in this triple canopy situation.
No. And Stan was like, I can't believe you even climb in a tree like this. It's how he talks. And God love you, Stan. And if Stan would hear this right now, he'd be go, you're a plug. That's what he'd say.
That's what he call you.
Counting the veins in his forehead as he screams triple canopy.
I mean, Steve's got a lot of good stories, a lot of dirt probably on Mark Terry, those old days, you know, Don, Jay, like back in the early days of Drury Outdoors. I mean, quite the all-star cast there of accomplished guys. You look back now, and it's pretty cool to look back on it.
Well, it is cool to look back and know that I've been able, me personally, and I know you've, Drury Outdoors is such a far-reaching company as far as the outdoor industry. I mean, let's face it. And the people that you guys have been able to meet, the all-stars of the industry, but you go back and myself, the people that I've been able to hunt with, Mark and Terry Drury and Stan Potts and Don and Candy Kiske and Jay Gregory and Lee and Tiffany. And, the list goes on. And really, I never got to hunt with Lee and Tiffany, but I did scout their farm with them or help them scout their first farm they bought that actually
was a lease of Mark and Terry's.
It was a lease of Mark and Terry's and myself. And we had hung quite a few stands on this property. So when Lee and Tiffany purchased it, they actually, your Uncle Mark asked me if I would go with them and kind of point out the different spots that we had hung tree stands. And as history would show, Tiffany's first bow kill, on film bow kill, first one in her entire career with Lee and Tiffany filming, was on a stand we called the Bluff stand that we had hung. And I showed them right where the stand was at.
Yeah.
Right where
I think I edited that. It was on Whitetail Extreme 3 or 4, I think. I could be wrong on that, but I remember editing her first. It was a summer that I'll never forget because I had to sit in the office with Dad. So their Bloomsdale office, he has a little office in there, like his, that's his. And there was a desk next to his desk, almost like a book study or whatever. And so I sat there with him literally over my shoulder watching me edit all summer long.
Brutal.
And you're like, what are you doing there? It was a very long summer.
I'm scratching my head at this decision here.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of second guessing over the shoulders.
Fun.
They call it backseat driving.
Yeah.
It was literally like that.
Ulcers when you're 20.
That was the first. I was an intern for Drury Outdoors at that time. I was in college. And so that was my first ever title. I think Whitetail's taking it to the extreme. It was either 3 or 4, but I edited that whole title by myself. And that was my first. They just kind of threw me in the water.
There you go.
It's a swim, son, which actually did that to me as well when I was a kid.
I mean,
at Lake of the Ozarks.
Kind of fits with the family philosophy, right?
It does.
Why not?
Figure it out.
Real quick, that Bluff stand that Tiffany shot her first film kill ever in their film, early film years, was the same tree. Again, you don't see this stuff behind the scenes. It's the same tree that your Uncle Mark and Terry literally had one of the worst fights I've ever seen.
The one where they were climbing down?
He was going to climb down and climb back up and strangle your Uncle Mark.
History right here. Okay, so...
And didn't a deer interrupt that fight?
Yeah. So we've told the story in the podcast. They have. Somebody has, Mark or Terry. Right. But I'd love to hear your perspective of it. But the way I understand it is... It was during the rut or something, and Mark was filming, and Terry was hunting. Is that right? Or vice versa?
I don't know which one was which. Yeah.
But Mark was filming, and he was telling Terry to rattle, and the deer. So Mark had turned around and he was looking back, like behind them where these deer were, and he was giving Terry the gesture behind his back to rattle, and it was kind of like, throwing his hands together like this, and Dad wouldn't do it.
Right.
And I guess Mark was getting more aggressive, like rattle. Finally,
he's going to gesture harder
Dad
at him.
said some choice words at the top of his lungs.
Yes.
Explicit words.
Yes.
And then I'm going to come over there and I'm going to kick your, what.
Explicit.
So they were in two different trees, thankfully.
Yeah.
Dad climbed down his tree.
He
walked over to Mark's tree. He was getting ready to climb up it. And Mark's side of this was, in my mind, like, I didn't know he was back there getting mad. He goes, I was just trying to get him in the rattle.
Yeah.
And when he starts screaming at the top of his lungs, Mark looks back like, what in the world? So as soon as Dad was getting ready to climb up, Mark said in his mind, he was gonna push Dad out of the tree. He was going to stomp his head as he was trying to get up into the stand.
What else
There was
are you
no
gonna do?
way he was going to let Terry get in that stand.
Yeah. So for your information, your Uncle Mark and your dad sometimes didn't always get along, but that's typical of siblings.
That's why they don't hunt
That's
together anymore.
That's typical of brothers. They didn't hate each other. They loved each other very much, but they didn't always see eye to eye. And they certainly didn't see eye to eye on that morning.
Yeah. So turns out a deer comes running like it's the rut. It comes chasing a doe or something. A big buck comes, and Mark's like, buck. And so Dad ran back to his stand, climbed back up. They almost killed that deer. They didn't.
Yeah.
The way the story goes.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. They no longer hunt together.
Well,
for many
for
reasons.
self-preservation.
Yeah, I think that's why our company still exists.
When they went over this whole story, did Mark mention that he thought your dad was going to kill him?
Yes.
I mean, really.
Yeah.
I mean, he thought
and
What else are you going to think if someone climbs a tree? Like, it's
Terry's
not
a hothead.
well.
They both can be, but Terry's can really be a hothead.
Well, yeah. I just say this: he was. They both have their. They're both very similar in that, in my opinion. You know, they both have their breaking points.
They're yin
very
and yang.
easygoing.
Yeah.
Until you hit one particular spot, and then it's over the top for him.
Yeah, there's no
middle ground.
There's no middle ground. No. It's either they're calm or you're fired.
Great. I'm going to pull you out of a tree stand.
Yes.
Fun times. But you look back and, the Mark and Terry Drury's, and this is from myself, Harold and David Knight, and, obviously Chris Parrish and Ray I, and the different people in the industry and icons in the industry. Wayne Carlton. I got to elk hunt with Wayne Carlton and Ralph Abe Moline, which we mentioned Stan Potts and the people in the industry that I've been able to share a tree with and hunt with and film. I've mentioned this before, and I almost feel like kind of the Forrest Gump of hunting. In that, if I start telling the story, nobody would ever believe it.
Steve's everywhere.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
Run, Steve, run.
Well, I'm happy that you're jumping in with us today. I wanted to talk turkey. Obviously, it's that time of year. This will air in the first week of the Missouri turkey season, and there's a couple dum-dums on this podcast that can't call the mouth
struggle
call.
with mouth calls.
I practiced the whole way in today and the 40-minute truck ride, and it was pretty random whether or not something would sound like a turkey or just not sound like it. Just not make a sound. Like I could not get it to be consistent. When I sound like a turkey, not bad. I mean, I can make it work.
Yeah.
But man, I just couldn't be consistent with it. That's always been my problem. So I was hoping, because you're a championship caller and obviously been doing this since the 80s?
Oh yeah. Well, I competed my first contest in 79.
There you go.
But it was some years prior to that. So I shot my first turkey in 1971 or maybe 72, somewhere in early 70s.
They had turkeys then?
They had turkeys back then. And so I knew how to yelp and call then. So early 70s.
So Steve, his resume is long and been in every calling contest you can think of, won most of all of them. maybe missing a couple very.
I'm missing the Grand National Senior Division. That's what I'm missing, and I do have a Grand National Championship with winning the Champion of Champions in 1998. That same year, Chris Kirby won the Grand National Senior Division, and that's the one that I would still dearly love to win.
Sure,
and I haven't quit trying.
And sounding better today than ever. Really,
I'm according to the judges' scores, I am anyway. So,
I was hoping that he could show us the way. Like, are there some tips here on how to make a call sound like a turkey?
Yeah, I'm ready.
First off, with a mouth call and with any call. So I didn't bring a friction call with me, Matt and Tim. But
I feel like those we can almost all figure it out.
Well,
right?
but see, it all comes down to rhythm, in my opinion. So to put a mouth call in your mouth, and if you got the wrong rhythm, first off, the mechanics of it is, I say kind of a kiyuk, like, because I think turkeys have a hen has two distinct levels, high and low, and then there's a turnover. There's a little hitch in the middle. There's a little turnover in the middle. Whether they sound clear, whether they sound raspy, whether they sound a low or high pitch, it doesn't make any difference. You still have that same basic mechanic of rhythm. So
right out of the gate, the cut, so people know this. I mean, the cut's always on top,
always
right?
on the top.
And the cut makes a huge difference in how the call's going to sound, right? You guys have been making calls for 30 years. The cut's a big part of what comes out at the end, right?
Yes.
Is it the cut and the amount of pressure that you put through there?
So the top reed is your soundboard.
Okay.
The bottom reeds are your body. So you got your body underneath, your soundboard on top.
Okay.
That top reed is the only thing and the main thing you're concerned with.
Yeah.
In fact, when I separate my mouth call, I just take a piece of flat toothpick, basically break the flat toothpick in half, separate the top reed, leave the toothpick in there and let it dry that way. Mm-hmm. And then when you get ready to hunt, you just kind of get it wet, have that toothpick side to side, and your top reed separated. Boom, your call's
that
ready
air
to go.
Pocket through there a little bit, right?
You're separating that top reed. If that top reed is stuck, the call's not going to sound any good. Once the top reed is separated, the call's going to be beautiful.
Okay,
doesn't make any difference if you have 2 or 3 reeds underneath. If they're stuck together, the call's still going to sound beautiful.
Okay.
So you got it ready to call. You want to do you want to come up from your diaphragm. You want to let the call do most of the work. Your mouth doesn't need to do all the work, like this. I'm doing, because I'm just huffing. I'm almost not working my mouth.
Is there a word that is there some sort of word or vocalization that you could do before you put the call in? So like to practice, like this is what you would be saying.
I'd say, yep, 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 yep.
Okay.
Yep, yep. So here it is again. I'm going to back off a little. And all I'm doing is I'm chop, 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 and putting little put. And if you want to call more aggressive,
how do you get that part? That quick, I can't get enough breath to do it fast enough. It seems like it's a real slow cadence.
So what I'm doing is I'm just going puck. Only I'm cutting it down more with my jaw. There you go.
Yeah, easy. Okay, I got it.
Done. Steve, what about fit? Because a lot of people will buy a mouth call, throw it in, and not realize
too big.
that you can trim, that up to fit your mouth. How do you know what's the right size?
So there really is only 2 sizes. There's a youth size, and then there's basically a regular size. Now, regular size will have large frame, medium frame, and small frame. Most standard mouth calls in the industry, almost 90% of your mouth calls are small frame with the bigger tape.
And do you trim the tape around there so it better fits
I
in
use
your mouth?
a tape cutter, and then so it's like it'll cut them the same every time. So it's just like a press.
Oh, sure. And I guess I'm referring to someone that maybe goes and buys some calls. Do they need, like, if they pop them out of the box, should they look at fit when they put it in?
Should they cut the tape down even
Absolutely,
more?
if they think it's gagging them. But remember this, any slight change. Okay, the best way I can describe it is archery. If you have any change in your torque of your arm or your sight pin or your rest, then that's going to change where you hit. Same way with a mouth call. If you trim off more of the tape, it's going to change your airflow. It's going to change your air seal. If you trim any of that top reed, play with that, it's going to change the sound.
So if you got air leaking around the sides, then you know that you probably need to trim a little.
Yeah, or if it's gagging you, I would only trim if it's really making you feel uncomfortable.
Okay.
Other than that, because you need all that tape for good air seal. Because if you don't have good air seal, then you're just a lot of air is going to escape.
So should there be any air? Because it's obviously it's in the roof of your mouth.
It's in the roof of your mouth.
And so you're saying it should be sealed to the roof of your mouth where only any air is coming from between your tongue and the call itself.
Yeah. So I'll try and do it without even moving my mouth. That's just all air pushing that call, and the call's doing the work, if that makes sense.
And are you changing the pressure on the call with your tongue?
No, I'm keeping same even pressure and just huffing it with huffs of air.
Okay.
So
I think that's part of my problem is change the amount of pressure.
Don't overthink it. Put them and obviously when I was 8, 9 years old, it was much easier to learn than in our 40s or 50s or now me 60,
30s.
He's a liar.
I'm just coming up with different ages that people could be.
But the younger you are when you start this, the better. But you're never too old to learn. And the thing you got to learn is don't think your mouth and your jaw has to do all the work.
Okay.
Let that mouth call do a lot of the work.
Okay.
The tongue, are you putting a lot of pressure on the call, or it's how do you figure that part out?
I'd say not as much on my light yelping, soft yelping, but a little tighter clamp when I start doing that cutting and excited call. Yes. Okay. Yeah, definitely a little tighter.
When you get into cutting, what is it that how are you cutting so fast? Like is it there again? Is there something you're kind of like mouthing it's the same way. Well, let me explain this. As I said earlier, it's rhythms. So cutting is not going to work if you, okay, that's just not turkey language. Cutting works when you, so I'm doing turkey rhythm. I'm doing the same thing as I did that rapid fire, but I'm slowing it down in a good turkey rhythm. It's the same way with language or when somebody's speaking to you. How many times have you had somebody and they're like almost mumbling? You're like, what did they say? I heard them, but I have no idea what that person said. Well, if they slowed it down and said it in the right cadence, you'd probably hear exactly everything they said. Yeah, turkey's the same way. Man, the cadence is, I mean, like I said, I can yelp a little bit. I can enough, but I cannot get that. I cannot cut. It's like I cannot get fast enough to get a cadence going. I'll tell you another one that a lot of people have a hard time with, and that's the purr. And I can't do that. Even with Sound of Spring, when we come out with Sound of Spring, a lot of the calling instructions on Sound of the Springs really drove and resonated hard with the viewer, even in the rental, the rental back in 1990. Absolutely. 90, I have turkey callers still today. Some of your top, a lot of your top callers, your Matt Van Sices and your Josh Grossenbachers of the world. Scott Ellis has said that they studied that Sound of Spring tape and learned some of their calling techniques from that tape, from the early Drury Outdoors. I need to go back. It's in DeerCast, though, the full video. So it's the second ever title that Mark Terry, these guys ever produced. King of the Spring was the first one. Sound of the Spring was the second one. And the whole premise was to try to tell you the sound or teach you the sounds of a wild turkey, right? Basic backbone vocabulary of the wild turkeys. You had Jeff Probst, you had Dale Wiffler, you had Mark Drury, Terry Drury, myself, Keith Wallig. You had I hope I'm not missing anybody. Oh, Randy Panic. Yeah. Randy Panic. God love him.
he had some really powerhouse callers during that time, going over all the backbone. One of the calls that I covered in Sound of the Spring was a cluck and purr. It's a very hard call for people to learn. And what I do is I use the end of my tongue. I don't come from the throat. Your Uncle Mark does it from the throat. So it doesn't make a difference how you do the flutter as long as you accomplish it. I do it only with a mouth call in my mouth. Like this.
That's crazy.
Now, this isn't the best, for whatever reason. I just built this call, not the best sounding purr, but that's the mechanics of of how I do the purr, and I let my fat cheeks, and I'll admit they're fat. Your Uncle Mark and your dad remind me of it all the time.
No.
Of course, then
I've never noticed them to take a physical attribute of someone and then pick on them for it. That's weird.
Yeah. So I fire right back with the glasses and the big nose. So
you're an idiot.
Anyway, there you go. So
we should help our buddy Kelly out, who has this week's question of the day.
All right. So the question of the day is proudly brought to you by Nomad Outdoors, building the most innovative, authentic hunting apparel to inspire everyone to experience and protect the traditions of hunting.
My name is Kelly Mathis, and I'm from West Monroe, Louisiana. I'm an avid turkey and deer hunter, and they tell me if you can kill a turkey in Louisiana, which I've killed my share, you can kill a turkey in any state. My question is, during deer season, I use a colored light, mainly green, to enter my stands and exit my stands. My question is, do you think that a colored light disturbs turkeys on the roost in the morning time? Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks, Kelly.
And his dog.
And if folks submit a question of the day, they could get a DeerCast hat. So just go to exactly. In fact, it's yours. We need it back to send to
and the
next question of the day.
I got a Drury Outdoor hat in my truck.
Well, you're good then.
Okay.
So what do you think,
Steve?
Absolutely. Lights will affect turkey. Lights don't affect deer, in my opinion, hardly at all. So use the green light for entering for whitetails. If you're getting set up for turkey, stay away from any light. White light, green light, red light, blue light, don't make any difference. Turkeys see color.
Yeah.
So you absolutely will flush turkeys off the roost. You probably will not bother them from a distance. So let me be clear on this. If you're within their danger zone where they feel danger, which if I would put a yardage on it, I'd say within 100 yards of them, they're going to flush when they see the light. If the light is a distance from them, they have depth perception and they can tell that light is a long ways away, and so they won't flush, if that makes sense. But if you get in close to a roost area and you're approaching, and if it's pitch dark, you're going to have to go do it without a light. Or take a chance of flushing your turkeys.
Okay, that's great.
There you go. And
the Wildlife Word is brought to you by Tracker Off-Road, made with the know-how of American workers, built for those who love the outdoors. So because turkeys have monocular vision, they have poor depth perception, unless they do this. A, walk off the distance. B, triangulate with the position of the sun. C, move their head, or D, use echolocation. So how do they make up for that poor depth perception?
Steve.
I'm going to say C, move their head.
Move their head.
I'm going to say C, but I like the thought of D, use echolocation.
They're like bats.
That'd be
bats
great.
of the animal world.
That'd be awesome.
You guys are both right. Congratulations.
Ding, ding, ding. Might be like close to 50 years of turkey hunting, I guess. Yeah.
You know stuff.
Yeah.
You won a DeerCast hat. Congratulations.
The one you're wearing.
Wait a minute. I didn't know I was competing.
I was going to take that back to give to Kelly, but since you won this, you get to keep it. Kelly is screwed. Sorry, Kelly.
That's great.
So, Steve, give us some parting shots here. I want one dirt story on Marketary that's actually shareable.
Before we go any further, real quick, my nephew Jose Rincon got his first turkey.
Hey.
It's a DeerCast.
And it's going to be on DeerCast. So take a look at it. If you ever get a chance, thank you. If you ever get a chance to take a child out, take a kid out turkey hunting or any hunting, just do it. It's the most rewarding thing you'll ever do. Yeah.
I look forward to it. Give
back to the sport and take a kid. So,
yeah. We need it pretty badly.
So back to 100%. The dirt.
All right.
I got to hear it. What's your question?
No. I want to hear from you.
Dish.
If there's I want you to dish a story, something that happened that you can actually share to our audience that's about Mark or Terry or the both of them or just something good. Putting you on the spot.
Oh, wow. Involving both of them?
Or either, whatever.
So I think, and I don't want to and maybe this is a good thing, but my wife is 11 years. Yeah, my wife's 11 years younger than me. And one of the things that I thought was nice hilarious is Mark and Terry used to have a place up in Pike County, Illinois, at Harpo's Heartland Lodge.
Yeah. Yep.
And and of course I was with them as well. And then we leased ground through Harpo's. And one day I was at a hotel room with your dad, and the phone didn't work. And this was before cell phones. Yeah. And so I was in a hotel room, gave my wife the hotel we were at, and she couldn't get through. And so she thought myself and your dad were out,
carousing.
She thought we were out catting around. So finally, I was wondering why I never heard from her. So, I'm going to say it was probably like the next morning. Still never heard from her. And so I call her and she goes, "Where were you last night?" And I said, "Well, I was with Terry for a while. And, we got some stands hung and got some stands trimmed. And then I, after dinner, we went to the Red Dome. Went to the Red Dome, had a few drinks, and then I crashed, and she's like, she goes, "Well, you could just stay with her." And she hung up the phone. So and this is where it brings in your Uncle Mark. Mark, now Terry understood, okay, because, mishaps. So by the way, how I corrected it is I marched right up to the office. I said, "I don't think your phone in the room works because my wife's ready to divorce me." And they go, "Oh my gosh, you're kidding me." I go, "No, let me walk back to the room. You call. And if the phone don't ring, then I would like for you to call my wife and explain to her that this phone is not working in the room.
You need a doctor's note."
So she saved me. The phone didn't work. She called my wife. She said, "Look, the phone is not working." So your Uncle Mark took it one step further.
Shocking.
Okay. Great. So now every other time he's around Dawn, and we get talking about going out, he'll go, "You can just stay with him," or with her in my case. And so that was pretty funny. But I got tons of story.
You got just a billion of them.
I got a million of them.
Most of them.
Your dad or your dad and your uncle, they're relentless. If they find a weak point in somebody, so any of you that get to meet them and talk to them, they're very intelligent people, but they're also relentless. They
probing you for
also
failings.
Very mean.
Yep.
Not a mean way, but it feels it at the time.
Don't
if you're
kid
the one
because they love.
Yeah.
But and I think probably the other, and I'll make this as brief as I can. The first ever Drury Outdoor trip that we ever took, your dad and Uncle Mark bought a camera, and they asked me to go along with them. And actually, Jeff Probst was originally going to go on that trip to northern Arkansas on a turkey hunt, Ozark Mountains with Pat Jackson, and just the way your dad describes and your Uncle Mark, Pat Jackson with the cigarette hanging in his mouth and the campfire going, and he had a sack of potatoes and a can of oil is about all he brought for food for the week. And your dad will always remark that we would have starved to death if I had made a trip with Tommy Bourne actually went to hunt with Tommy Bourne, who, God love him, who is now passed. I went and we killed several turkeys on that trip. I fried all that turkey up and brought it to that trip, the first Drury Outdoor trip. And to this day, your dad and your Uncle Mark talk about and speak about the fact that if old Fat Boy hadn't brought the fried turkey breast from
protein.
Mississippi, we just starved on that trip. Yeah. But that was funny. Where your Uncle Mark actually killed the first turkey on film
in the brush.
In the brush. No, was that turkey in the brush?
I felt like you didn't see much of the turkey.
I tell you what, your dad was filming, and I think when Mark shot, he did the infamous camera roll.
Yeah,
he jumped the camera. Yeah, on the very first kill. But that was the first Drury Outdoor kill in the history of Drury Outdoors on film.
Yeah, and those Mark and Terry are still this way. Like you should not trust them to bring the food. like Mark's implied. Camp is notoriously, it's like he's got a pack of bologna and a thing of craft cheese, and that's it. Yeah.
Some granola bars.
If you're lucky. He's lucky because Taylor now, when she's in camp, obviously she takes care of him. But Dad, he's got Forrest. Like they never have food at camp. Like
that's burned once and never again.
Oh yeah. Like if you're planning on eating like a king, it's not going to be at their place.
No.
If it's just them there.
Unless you go out to eat.
They're like, They're like squirrel. I don't know, man. They don't take much. They don't require much food. It seems like at camp. I don't get it.
I'm kind of the same way. Like I focus on I just want to hunt. I just want to do this. And but then I'm wishing I would have had more food and something.
Which is why they're skinny and I'm fat. I make sure I got.
You saved their skinny butt.
I did. Yeah. On that trip, I did. Your dad still, whenever we talk, he'll have fond memories. And the other thing you don't see on camera is on the way back from that trip, your Uncle Mark and your dad, and I think I partook in this too. We overindulged.
Well, shocking.
I mean, it was hilarious. The trip back. How I don't think I've ever partied that hard in all my life. We were celebrating.
We got one.
We got one on film, and then I killed one off camera because I killed one when.
the first one.
I was odd man out.
Yeah.
And so we had one camera. Yeah. So instead of me going together, all three of us together, Mark and Terry went, and then we swapped out. And on one of the hunts where Mark and Terry were together, I was on my own still hunting and killed one.
Yeah.
So we killed two on the trip. History will show. And we overindulged on the way home. I think I can't tell you how many times we had to stop to use the restroom. But that was hilarious.
Those are the old days.
How you launch an industry.
Yeah, you don't want to try that now. It might cost you about $10,000 if you get pulled over.
Those things. Yeah. They have a few of those stories from back in the day.
Yeah.
Different world.
Yeah. How blessed are we? And how blessed am I to been able to be a part of that?
It's been a fun ride, and it's neat to see where the industry has come from then to now.
Yep. Yep, that's right.
Appreciate you stopping in with us.
So if people haven't been turned off by the idea of hunting with Mark and Terry, they can still apply to potentially hunt with them this fall in DeerCast.
It's much different now, let me tell you.
That sounds like a party. So just go to DeerCast and hit the giveaway tab and go in there. Enter if you haven't already. We'll draw a name in July, and you could hunt with them this fall.
The party part's still the same. I mean, they just do it at their camp.
Yep.
Yeah. That's the difference.
Don't show up with any weaknesses.
And
don't show them.
For the record, they probably won't make too much fun of you until after you leave.
That is true as well.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening and watching. Make sure you subscribe so you get the show every Wednesday when it launches.
All right. Until next time.
Yes.
Happy turkey hunting.
Next time.
Identify those targets and peace out.
DeerCast is giving you the chance to hunt with Mark and Terry Drury. Head over to DeerCast.com to enter.
We're adding new videos every week, so make sure to click that subscribe button and check out all of our amazing content. This episode of DoD TV was brought to you by Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's.